Often in the self-defense community and the Krav Maga community, we get caught up upon the importance of techniques without recognizing that without skills and attributes, we don't get these techniques to work. So one of the things that we need to develop are skills and attributes. And perhaps one of the most important ones is control and range and distance. Because if I can't control range and distance, the person that I'm dealing with gets an easy opportunity to hit or strike me. So one of the things that I want to develop is the ability to control range. If we start looking at the realities of what violence looks like, we can tell that rarely is somebody just jumping out on us or surprising us. Most of the time, there's some form of dialogue and verbal exchange. And when we look at this, we can start to understand the different stances that we use. So we might choose an unprepared stance to train from, which is complete surprise. We might start to raise a hand up and have a semi-prepared stance. We might also have a fighting stance. In reality, the only stance that we actually have time to pull is an interview or de-escalation stance. And this is when we're talking and having that verbal exchange or that interview with the person that we're dealing with. And this is where I want to control range from. Because once the fight starts, it's going to be such a melee, such a mess, that to really be able to adequately control range is going to be very difficult for me. So this is a way that I control range. When I'm dealing with somebody, I don't want to be this close to them. If Nick wants to grab me, if he wants to hit me, he can do that, and his action is going to beat my reaction. So what I want to do is move to a position where that if he wants to attack me, he's first got to move. So here, if he doesn't move his feet and he tries to punch me, I'm out of range. So if he does want to punch me, he's got to move forward, which gives me a much bigger movement to react and to respond to. I'm also in this phase going to adopt my de-escalation stance. So this is where I'm with my hands out in a placating fashion. Basically, it's the same as my fighting stance, just that the hand position is different. And what's this telling him is the international language for I don't want any trouble and stop. So by my body language, I'm communicating a lot. And studies have shown that we believe about, at a very conservative guess, that around 67% of all communication is via body language. So if I stay here, I'm not showing myself as a threat. If I was to adopt a fighting stance, or something similar that looks aggressive, Nick actually has a right to defend himself from this. Because if we look at the legal definition of assault, if he has a reason to fear for his safety, which he has, if I'm now presenting myself in an aggressive fashion, and I put myself at a range where I can cause him harm, I've actually escalated the situation. And I certainly don't look like, to any observers in the environment, like I'm the victim. So I'm going to stand with my hands up, and what this is doing is guarding my silhouette. So for Nick to attack me, making a straight strike is going to be difficult, because he's got to come through these hands. So what I'm going to force him to do is do something which is called breaking shape. So he's going to have to make a circular attack. And if you look at a circular attack, his whole shape will have to change, which will give me a lot more of that warning sign and alarm bell that he's about to make that attack. So by having my hands up here and guarding my shape and my silhouette, I'm really limiting his ability to make a straight strike, which means he's got to find a way around these hands, which means a circular strike. So what I'm trying to do as I set this scene up is make sure that he's got to do multiple things before he can actually make the attack. So the first thing we're going to look at is how to control range and distance. If Nick puts 1 foot forward, doesn't matter if people don't stand like this, but what's going to give me my cue is this forward foot. And if I'm here looking at center of chest, I can't see with my peripheral vision that foot. And that means I'm too close. So if Nick wants to punch me, he can. If I move back to here and look at center of chest, and with my peripheral vision, I can see that foot, that front foot, and a little bit of ground, I know when he goes to strike, he's out of range. Now, with my foot position, I adjust it slightly. Now look where I am, in range. So it's a very subtle shift that allows me to stay out of range. And what I don't want to do is move back too far, because this is a socially awkward situation to talk from. And what's likely is he'll just move in to that position, and now I've lost that control of range. So one of the things I want to do when controlling range is find that sweet spot where I'm just out of his physical reach, but at the same time, I can still converse and dialogue with him and still give him that problem of how does he get round here. My biggest hope is this is when I would start my de-escalation process and start to bring the emotion and the situation down. But if it doesn't, I'm very well prepared if he makes that swinging punch to come in straight away. I don't even have to wait to block it. That's almost going to take too long. So here, if he decides to move in, I can work preemptively. If he decides to move in and strike, again, I can block and work preemptively. And if he just strikes from there, as soon as I see that shoulder come back, I know to start to make my block. So when we start to understand how we can control range and distance, we can start to control the fight before it's even begun. And we want to give ourselves every opportunity to basically put him at a disadvantage and ourselves at an advantage. So by controlling range, by looking at center of chest, by working out where I should stand in relation to my peripheral vision's capture of that front foot, I can force him to have to move. By putting my hands out in front in a placating manner, not an aggressive manner, I can force him to make a circular strike. So in this way, I can start to control his movements, and if I understand what his movements have to be, I can prepare for them completely. So this is why it's extremely important for us to develop those skills and attributes of controlling range.